Welcome everyone to the 2023 ConnectEd Spring Webinar Series. This spring, we're exploring ways that we can know our students more deeply and create learning spaces where they can thrive. My name is Deborah Masacci. I work in the University of Washington College of Education ConnectEd Office for Professional and Community Learning. Kind of a mouthful. It's my pleasure to welcome today's speakers. Today, we have Dr. Sylvia Bagley, joined by 4 teacher leaders from different districts in the region, and I will let them all introduce themselves.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Sylvia Bagley, and I am really grateful to everyone for taking the time to come here and share about your experiences as teacher leaders. And I direct the Teacher Leadership Master's program at the University of Washington, and also offer those classes up to districts around the state. So I'm going to pass it in alphabetical order to Drew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Drew McDonald. I'm currently a 6th grade math teacher at Salmon Bay K-8 in Seattle Public Schools. I've been teaching for 9 years, and I finished the Master's in Instructional Leadership program with Sylvia a few years ago.
All right, Grace, do you want to go next?
Yes, my name is Grace Armstrong. I'm currently an 8th grade special education teacher at a middle school in Seattle Public Schools. I work in behavioral spaces, so kids that have had behavior challenges in general education settings. And something that's new to my position this year is I get to co-teach a language arts class that is a mixture of special education students and general education students. And that really feeds into my passion for the neurodiversity of students with behavior issues and how that intersects with reading and literacy.
Perfect. Fee, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Fee Wen. I am a kindergarten teacher in the Nooksack Valley School District. That's in Everson, which is about 15 minutes south of the Canadian border. I've been with this district for the last 5 years. It's my happy place. I interned here and I never left. In addition to being a formal teacher leader in my building, I'm also a new teacher mentor. And aside from this teacher leader stuff, I love social emotional learning. I am really interested in early childhood language and literacy development, and I'm a huge proponent of teaching for social justice and equity in the early years.
Thank you, Fee. And Trisha, do you want to go?
Hi there, I'm Trisha Bryant. I teach in the San Juan Islands. I teach 1st grade. This is my 21st year teaching. I've taught in California, mostly in Seattle, and now the San Juan Islands. I've taught grades 1st through 12th, but mostly 1st grade. And I've done some leadership work on leadership teams. I've done instructional coaching, and I'm also a new teacher mentor.
Awesome. Okay, Deborah, do you want to show our questions? All right, thanks so much. So when I was asked to do one of these webinar series, I thought, what would be the best way to engage teacher leaders right now around what they're doing? And after thinking about it for a while, I realized I just want to give you a chance to talk and share. So I came up with these guiding questions that are here on the slide, and I've sent them in advance to everyone who agreed to be here and talk. And my goal is to move fluidly through these questions while also leaving plenty of room and space for people to respond to each other if they'd like to build on these ideas. In advance, I'll be asking participants to talk about, first of all, why it is that they've chosen to take on teacher leadership work, given that teaching in itself is already quite a bit of responsibility and takes a lot of time. I'm going to ask our participants to help us understand for each of them what teacher leadership has looked like for them in their career. They've touched on a little bit, but I'll ask them to share even more about that, the range of things that they've done in the past and or that they might want to do in the future. I'd love to hear from participants about how they keep equity and students at the center of all they're doing as teacher leaders. And then also, especially right now, this year, at this time of the year, what is it that's keeping them going and sustaining them as teacher leaders? And so before I get started on asking each of the participants to share about these questions, I wanted to briefly share for those who are joining today about what teacher leadership is, since it tends to be kind of a nebulous term and it's not always all that well understood. So teacher leadership basically refers to teachers who are leading both within and beyond the classroom, doing what it takes to enact meaningful change for kids and for systems. The range of roles that teacher leaders play is vast, and it can change from year to year, sometimes month to month. Some roles are full-time, some are part-time, some are formalized, some are less formalized, so it really runs the gamut, and we'll probably hear a lot about that today from our participants. Teacher leaders' areas of focus range from curriculum development to offering professional development and leading grade level teams to coaching and mentoring colleagues, new teachers, veteran teachers, to doing policy advocacy work, developing new initiatives, perhaps to involve family and community more in the schools, and a whole lot more. So that's just my brief overview of some of the many things that teacher leaders do. And I'm going to start us off and ask if Drew can get us started with the first question. So Drew, why are you a teacher leader? In other words, teaching's already a lot of work. Why take on additional leadership responsibilities?
Thanks, Sylvia. Well, there's several reasons for that. I mean, one of the big reasons is that typically people who are teacher leaders, we are passionate about the work and we know the work needs to be done. We can only do so much in our classrooms just as a classroom teacher, but when we take on those additional leadership responsibilities, we're able to really have an impact at a whole grade level, at a school level, maybe even a district level, or maybe even beyond. And we know that there's a lot of equity work that needs to be done because we do live in an inequitable system. There are students who aren't having all their needs met, and that passion to try and solve those problems, I think, is probably the main reason why I want to take on those additional responsibilities, knowing that someone needs to do this and I want to be that person, or I want to be one of those people who do that. But there's also a little bit more to it than that. One is that, you know, working in your classroom can sometimes also be a little lonely, which might sound funny because, you know, we have all these students with us, but when you're the only adult in there, it can feel a little lonely. But when you're a teacher leader, you get to work with other teachers. You get to support other teachers. You get to learn from them. And that makes the job so much more rewarding, so much more enriching, and really can reinvigorate you after a day with nothing but students, which can be lovely as well. But sometimes we need that contact with other professionals to kind of keep us going.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Drew. I'm going to hop over to Grace. You want to share your why of teacher leadership?
Yes, mine is very similar to Drew, perhaps taking the more logistical approach that every single teacher that I know spends extra time doing their job. So for me, it's more of a question of how do I want to invest my time and whose vision of our education system are we collectively enacting as a teaching population. So for me, I think about how am I participating and am I enacting an outdated version or a modern version of education? So for me, I like to invest time more so in the beginning, and it's kind of almost an efficiency thing, which teachers don't like to talk about efficiency and things like that. It sounds too businessy sometimes. But for me, I like to create systems on the forefront, and I always feel like I get my time investment back in a more positive way. Every teacher has also probably sat through a meeting where we're like, what really is the purpose of this? So thinking about, I always remember the school reform initiatives protocols that Sylvia introduced us to, and really having structures for either looking at student data or implementing a variety of diverse teacher voices, and making sure a lot of opinions are heard. I think looking at those types of resources always yields more observable positive results. And that kind of also spoke to my fourth question of being able to see the positive outcome of something sustains me as well. So knowing that my time was well spent means students' time was likely well spent as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Fee, do you want to share your why?
Sure. Drew, something that you said really connected to my journey to teacher leadership. And it's when you said contact with other professionals is what keeps you going, right? That community, that collaboration. And I'm going to take my answer a different route. I'm going to tell you my story. And my teacher leadership story started during the pandemic, actually. And it was right after we shut down, I started listening to a podcast called Unlocking Us by Brene Brown. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. And so many of the ideas resonated, and I just wanted to share and connect with people, but I couldn't, not in the way I wanted to. And so I thought, how can I continue to maintain that connection with my colleagues, with my peers, with my friends? And so I started a podcast club. And I invited a lot of people to come along with me, and the club included my building principal, classroom teachers, our school's mental health therapist, a school counselor, and we met every week and to unpack an episode that we'd listened to. And that was an opportunity for me to really try on my facilitating skills. And through that experience, I got to see the power of conversation, the connections that can be brought about through conversation, the new understandings, the new learning, the new perspectives that come from that conversation. And so for me, that space was really important. And that organically led to a book club once we could come back. And that led to opportunities to speak more during staff professional development. And then just this past year, I was invited to formally become a teacher leader, and here I am.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your journey, Fee.
Thank you.
So much here to pick up on more and ask more questions about later on. We'll move to Trisha now. Trisha, what is your why behind teacher leadership?
Well, I teach first grade and we do the Me Too signal a lot. I don't know if upper grades do that, but every thing that everybody else said, I was just wanted to do this the whole time. But I think also what Grace was talking about adding different perspectives, because I've now teaching for more than 20 years, been in different environments. I've been in public schools, private schools, alternative schools, wealthy schools, low income schools. I feel compelled to add my voice because just in my experience, I've had a lot of different experiences. And I also work at a school now where there's not a lot of teacher turnover, and a lot of our teachers have only worked in this building. So I have added my voice a lot more than I usually do, just to bring some perspective to that. Also, I think every good thing that I do as a teacher, I learned from another teacher. So I just want to give back because I've had such great mentors. And also I know Drew talked a little bit about isolation, and I grew up playing sports, and it's kind of a funny thing to be in a classroom by yourself, where sometimes you don't even interact with a lot of other adults. And teacher leadership has been a great way to really build a team with my colleagues.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Again, I invite you at any time if you wanted to jump in with some additional thoughts to do that. But for now, I'm actually going to move in the reverse order there, and we'll start with Trisha and ask the next question. And some of you, again, have already answered some of this, so feel free just to elaborate on that. Help us understand what teacher leadership has looked like for you so far in your career, meaning the range of things that you've done in the past or are doing now.
Well, I think it started in my early teaching years as being a guinea pig, mostly for a lot of things. I piloted curriculum, I piloted evaluation systems. I was always just willing to try something new. Maybe my colleagues were like, I'm not taking on another thing. I was like, I'll do it. So that's kind of how it started. And then I've served on leadership teams in different ways. I've served on curriculum adoption committees. I became an instructional coach, and now I'm actually leading our professional development, which feels like a really different role for me, but it's been interesting. I worked closely with principals and admin to plan professional development for the last couple of years. And that feels really different as a classroom teacher. but it's been nice to be able to bring that voice of a teacher to those kind of conversations. So.
Okay, quite a few different roles over the years. And I know there's probably been some overlap and there's other things you're thinking about doing in the future as well. Let's keep going backwards. Sophie, how about you?
Yeah,
You shared some of it already.
Yeah, similar to how Trisha started, a lot of informal opportunities, piloting new curriculum, joining this committee, that committee. I just really wanted to be involved. I've always really just loved being with grownups, which is funny because I'm a kindergarten teacher. So I guess like I just love people. And so it's an opportunity to connect and get my name out there, especially as a newer teacher. I'm only in my 5th year. And then in the last year, I've stepped into more formal opportunities. So that looks like a lot of sitting around the table with my building principal and our small teacher leadership team within the building to plan our school improvement plan, to create our theory of action in the beginning of the year, to plan return retreats in the fall, to plan PD. So an example of a professional development session we just planned was about learning about the levels of culture using Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain as a frame. And then I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm also a new teacher or mentor. So I work with a couple of teachers who are in their first 3 years. So those are a couple of things that I've done in the last year.
Wow, taking so many notes. Thank you. Excellent. All right, going back to Grace now. How about you? What's been the range of what you've done?
Yeah, the way that I started thinking about this question was, when was the first time I ever felt like a leader? And I began my teaching career, I should say leader as a teacher. I began my teaching career at a school that was a specialty school just for kids that had behavior issues or had a behavior diagnosis. And all of the teachers at my school were like seasoned veterans, been teaching for 20 years. So I just felt so intimidated my first year as a teacher to really feel like I had an expert voice. And the very first time I had raised my hand in a staff meeting to add an idea, I literally remember that day and feeling like, okay, I have an idea, it matters. And it was just to do a photography campaign with the students. And I had no idea my principal was gonna say yes, but I'm not a photographer also. But I did it. I ended up doing it every single year. It was part of kind of like this students' talent show. And it was a form of self-expression that they could communicate their school experiences and feelings of exclusion. And it was therapeutic. So that's something that even now, though I'm not at that school anymore, I've been told it's the legacy lives on. So like that one little hand raise turned into something several years later. Since then, more formal roles, once I kind of felt more confident, were curriculum-based roles at a district level. And kind of, again, people have said just saying yes, you don't know where that road might lead you. So saying yes to being on a curriculum committee and kind of showing at a district level, people have talked about the isolation of a classroom. I worked at a school, again, that was a really small specialty school. So I kind of wanted to prove to my district that, hey, these kids with behavior issues, we exist, our school is here, we matter, and getting students' voice heard. So saying yes led one thing to another, and then the pandemic happened and kind of people were dropping like flies off this curriculum committee because every teacher was busy. And I sort of was the last person standing because I was being stubborn, don't give up easy. So I kind of got to have the say in the Renton School District's curriculum for language arts across high school, and really got to center what are the cognitive needs of high school students that might not like reading and who might struggle with reading, and what does a genuine student-centered literacy curriculum look like for students at the high school level for that. So yeah, I could keep going, but
I was just going to say I could ask questions, but I'm going to hold off. I'm taking lots of notes. Thank you so much. Drew, how about you? What's the range of things that you've done?
So I've done quite a lot of different things. The very first school I worked at, I actually did have like an official title in my math department of collaborative practice coordinator. And I would host meetings where we would focus on a topic like, how do we teach fractions, or how do we teach negative numbers? And I would do a little research into best practices, and then I would share some of that, but then we would also kind of discuss as a department, kind of agree on, okay, what are some common visuals that we want to use with students, or some common language that we want to use so that their experience is more aligned through the years. At my current school, I've done a lot of different things. So I was the chair of the BLT, our Building and Leadership team, for a year. I am also on the teacher leadership cadre, which is a Seattle Public Schools teacher leadership program. I've been doing that for 4 years. 2 of those years, I've led professional development around math. 1 year was around number talks, and then this year has been around supporting our K-5 teachers at implementing the Envision curriculum, which is new for them this year, but the middle school teachers have been using for several years. I also spent 2 of those years mentoring new math teachers, which was incredibly rewarding to just kind of build that strong relationship with a new teacher and really help support them to have a really successful year and feel really good about teaching. And then probably my sort of proudest accomplishment, which I know Sylvia will know a lot about, was the curriculum I wrote as part of my capstone project for the instructional leadership program, which is a curriculum called Humans Doing Math, which is all about challenging harmful cultural stereotypes and around mathematics and who can be a great mathematician, and also, ultimately kind of helping students of color, female students, LGBTQ+ students to kind of see themselves in mathematics, to kind of see role models, to see how, their historical roots connect to mathematics. So, teaching lots of non-Eurocentric math history, and also helping kids to connect their career interests to mathematics. And I actually did a lot of curriculum writing for that last summer. And now that curriculum is being used in empowerment math, which is a Seattle Public Schools support class that's taught in a lot of different schools. And that's been really rewarding to just hear all the positive feedback I've gotten from teachers about that curriculum. And I just want to keep building it, want to keep spreading the word. I've had the opportunity to present that in a number of different formats, and that's really made, in a way, it's made like my whole teaching career worth it, just to have even that impact.
That's an awesome story, Drew. And yes, I knew you would talk about that, and I would have prompted you if you hadn't. And that was, incredible. I'm a little distracted because I saw a yellow hand floating up on the side. Deborah,
That was me.
Oh, was that you?
I was clapping.
Oh, you were clapping. I couldn't quite figure out what that meant, but that was awesome. It was like,
Zoom has changed. It used to just be on your face, and now it floats.
Yeah. Did you all see that coming up there? Okay.
Sorry. Congratulations.
Awesome. No, I love it. Now that I know what it is, I think we should do that. We should just have hands floating up all the time and that kind of engagement. That's great. Okay. So I'm going to move now. We're going to go backwards again. So starting with Drew. And again, I feel like you've all talked about this to a certain extent, but you can elaborate, share more. How do you keep equity and students at the center of all that you do as a teacher leader?
Well, I mean, as you just heard, a lot of, and I didn't even mention all of the leadership work I'm doing, but a lot of the work I'm doing is specifically around some sort of equity initiative. So like the Humans Doing Math curriculum was, born out of my desire for there to be more diversity in mathematics programs and careers. I'm on my school's racial equity team this year. So, I joined that with the intent of trying to help our students of color feel more welcome at school and see themselves more in the curriculum. However, there are some aspects of leadership which maybe aren't as specifically equity focused. So for example, for mentoring a new teacher, a lot of what you're trying to do is just trying to help them kind of keep their feet on the ground, right? And help them feel like, yes, I can do this job. But even in that, I think, why are we here? I think is always the question that we need to draw ourselves back to. And when we get kind of caught up in the day-to-day, we can sometimes lose sight of that question. And sometimes it becomes more about like, I just need to make it through the day. But when we're working with our teams or working with another teacher, I think it's always important to have those moments where we ask ourselves like, okay, what's our goal? What's our goal for today? Like, why are we here? What is it? What is it we're wanting to accomplish? And I think almost all teachers get into teaching because they want to support students. And I think on the whole, teachers want everyone to be successful and want everyone to feel included. So I think drawing it back to that question of why are we here? Why are we teachers? What is our purpose in what we're doing? I think that is really what helps us to stay grounded in equity. And then also focusing on what are the students getting out of this, as opposed to just what are the teachers getting out of this. And I mean, teachers shouldn't be left out of the conversation, of course, but that's why we're here. We're here to support students. So if we're working, like if I'm mentoring a teacher, it does always need to come back to, okay, so what did students learn from this lesson, and how do we know that? And did all students learn the same thing, or were there certain groups that maybe didn't meet the learning objectives of the lesson, and why was that? So making sure we're not just focusing on what the teachers are doing, but making sure we're focusing on what is the student experience here, and what are they actually getting out of this these learning experiences that we're creating for them.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Drew. And I was actually thinking mentoring is such a rich space and a leverage point actually for a lot of equity work for a whole bunch of reasons, including what you just said, which is to be keeping it at the forefront at all times and asking those questions of the student teacher that we want them to be asking continuously throughout their career. And also, this ties into the next question for later, but also how do you sustain yourself and keep yourself well and grounded so that you can keep showing up for students in the best way possible? So just a couple of ideas that came to mind for me. Let's move to Grace. How do you keep equity and students at the center of all you do as a teacher leader?
Yes, I also had on my reflection sheet preparing, ask why. I had it in all capital letters because this why is one of the most powerful words in my opinion, because it can be a jumping off point. It can be an opportunity for a creative solution. I think the teachers have a responsibility to ask why to our administrators and maybe our district leaders, building leaders, but also asking why to our students as well, and really centering them. Sometimes if I'm searching for the answer to whether it's a curriculum question, maybe something I want to revamp how I'm teaching something, I might be asking my colleagues when really the answer may lie with my students. And with Drew also thinking about how many teachers just ask students, why don't you like math? Or why do you feel like, what are your feelings about math? And that can be an entry point to how can we really make these curriculum as inclusive as possible and really centering those voices. Just today, right before this meeting, for example, my school is moving sites, so we'll be at a temporary campus, and our principal just introduced the building plans, classroom assignments, and I happened to realize that our Kingmakers program, which is an amazing program my school has for young Black males, that program, the special education classrooms and all of the multilingual classrooms were all in one building that was smaller, and all the rest of the classrooms were in another building. So I was like, why are all of these classrooms that serve our more marginalized populations in one building and all the rest of the classrooms are in the other building? And it just forced that conversation to occur. So really, I think asking why forces uncomfortable conversations, but necessary conversations to occur. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. Fee, how about you? How do you keep equity and students at the center of all that you're doing as a teacher leader?
Yeah, in my reflection to this question, the teacher mentorship role came up as like the most concrete way that I keep equity at the center. So whenever I'm working with my mentees, when we're going through a coaching cycle and we're thinking about goals or lesson planning, I'm asking really intentional questions about access. So what strategies are you using to make sure that each and every student is able to access the content that you're putting in front of them? Or what does success look like for your multilingual students? What does it look for like for the kids who aren't quite at standards? So things like that. Bigger scope, this year, our district is working with the UW Center for Educational Leadership. And we've been learning about what equity means and what it does and doesn't look like in the context of our schools and our district. And as part of that work, we've been getting to talk directly with our students and get street level data from them about what their experience is. And the kids that we're talking about, we've been really intentional about trying to center the voices of the kids who are furthest from justice and using what they say to influence how we write our school's vision and experiences and experience. Yeah, so that's another way. And then when I think of equity, I think of making sure that each and every kid that walks through our door has what they need to think critically, to grow, to learn at high levels. And for me, I don't know that we can do that unless we as teachers know who we are as people first.
Mhm.
So I think that a prerequisite part of equity work is becoming more emotionally intelligent teachers so that we have the capacity to be responsive to our kids. And a part of emotional intelligence for me is being a reflective practitioner. So Grace, when you said like asking the why, that's a big deal for me. So one way that I support equity in smaller settings and like my PLC, or when I'm planning PD with my TL team, or when I'm with my mentee, is I'm pushing on those why questions. Why are we making the decisions we're making? Who does it serve? Who is it not serving? How can we continue to push on the team in front of me? How can we push on each other's thinking and also the thinking of the staff members around us? So yeah, just being reflective, being emotionally intelligent to the end of being more responsive to our kids.
Awesome, thank you. And Trisha, how about you? How do you keep equity and students at the center of all that you're doing as a teacher leader?
Well, I'm not sure what I can add to all of that. That was
A lot of this, right?
Yeah, a lot more of this.
Yeah.
I also think though what Fee was saying is just meeting the needs of your kids just really starts with knowing them so well and just loving them and getting to know them and investing in that, especially early on in the year. I think when I first started teaching, I thought I don't have time for that. I've got to do this and this and that, get through this curriculum and but now I just see the huge benefits and necessity of really getting to know kids, not just in the beginning of the year, but throughout the year. And also I was really guarded too in the beginning of teaching. And now I just really let them know who I am by talking about my life experience too. So I think that really helps. And then when Drew was talking about what's our goal, I really think of my classroom as we're like a big science experiment in here. And I am just constantly researching and trying things. And I'm getting immediate and delayed feedback about how I'm doing and how I am meeting the kids. And if, that really helps me just assess who I am meeting and who I'm not meeting and what I need to do differently. So I just really think of myself as every day is just a little bit of research, and I stay focused on the goal and get feedback and adjust accordingly.
I love and so appreciate that metaphor, Trisha. You probably know exactly why. Inquiry focused teacher leadership work. That's a beautiful way to think about what we're doing. It's a living experiment every day. So the final question before we move into more back and forth and seeing about other questions is, what keeps you going and sustains you as a teacher leader? So Trisha, if you want to just keep going for a little bit.
Sure. I think I'm just really passionate about being involved and impacting change and making progress. And I'm really passionate about helping students, but also I think the cycle of the year really helps me, because right now when you're just like crawling towards the summer, I am, especially now after the pandemic, I've noticed that my kids are making so much progress because we've had a more typical year. It's like when I'm about to give out and can't make it we have 21 days. We did a math problem and counted down today. So we actually have 21 days here on San Juan Island. But the progress that they're making, I'm like, no, I want you for 40, I need you for like 40 more days. And then we're just going to get everything done. And but then I think in the beginning of the year, the hope and, the stress of starting with a new class, you're fueled by the hope and the excitement and the new things I'm going to try. So I think that really helps me, and just all that student progress. I'm also fueled by professional development. So I spend a lot of my time just learning. I think so that it's not the same thing every year. I'm not the kind of teacher who does the same exact thing every year. I do a lot of the same things, but I'm always trying to learn something new to make it a little bit different. So
that lifelong learning piece is crucial, I think, for teacher leaders. It's part of who we are. And since I've known you, Trisha, I always feel like you're always bringing up some interesting new PD that you're going off to do with authentic, enthusiasm, and it's adding to that toolkit and keeping yourself going. And we've talked about that before. Thank you. Fee, how about you?
For me, I think it's the small moments that make that change is happening. So I work in an interesting building. I'm the only person of color. I'm a newer teacher, and I work in a space occupied mostly by white teachers who have grown up in this rural community their entire lives. And so their mindset is very similar. And my mindset is like kind of over here, along with a smaller group of teachers who have also entered in within the last 5 years. And so we've had to have some really uncomfortable conversations. We've had to grapple with some unfamiliar, uncharted territory. And sometimes that's hard because the feedback is not as positive as you'd hope. But sometimes you get moments like where people say, that made me really uncomfortable, but I know that's a good sign because that means I'm learning. Another example is during a staff meeting, one of our teachers was talking about how she was positive that what she was doing for her group of multilingual kids was the best thing for them because of this. And as a multilingual person of color myself, I raised my hand and I said, can I push back on that? And I think that was a pivotal moment because it could have been like a no, thank you. I'm pretty sure what I'm doing is right, but she said, yes, of course. Like it was an invitation to expand. And I got to share my own perspective of what it meant to be a person of color speaking another language in a space that was the minority. And so again, that was really powerful for me. And I think it's like the small moments where we are grappling with things together, we're feeling uncomfortable together, we're being vulnerable together, that that change is happening. If we didn't get to engage in those times together, then I don't know that we would know that we were moving in a different direction.
I want to ask just a super quick follow-up question for you. Out of curiosity, what do you think it is over the years or the months that led that particular teacher, without saying who they were, to be open to that and say, yes, of course? What do you think it is that your area does to support that?
Yeah, so we have been very intentional about norm building. And one of our norms is that we're working on constantly is being open to new ideas and new perspectives. And one of the practices that we try to embody all the time is by being curious and not jumping to conclusions and asking for people to share their story, right? And that was kind of tied to our work with the layers of culture, because we wanted our staff to know that we all experience the world differently based on our culture and our life experiences and where we come from. And because of that, we can't assume to know what everyone else's truth is, and that there are multiple truths are there. And yeah, just I guess the short answer to your question is really intentional norm building that helps us be safe, psychologically safe in these hard moments together. And trust,
you so
right?
much.
I've known this teacher for
Yeah.
years.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you. So Grace, how about you? What keeps you going?
As other people have said, whenever I get to position myself as a learner, I feel like that feeds my teacher's soul. I think every teacher, whether it's conscious or subconscious, became a teacher partially because we never wanted to leave the classroom environment or the learning environment. So whenever I get to be in the learning position, that is giving me energy. The second one is really simple, having fun with students. Anytime when I get to prove to students that learning can be fun, even if they're like, Miss Armstrong, this is so cringe. Why do you have to be so cringy? Or awkward jokes or whatever it might be in the classroom. I just love when students smile. Like, that sounds cheesy, but it's true. That's why I show up to work every day. That's why I teach middle school in particular. And whenever students get to have authentic interactions and feel like this is me and this is my classroom, that they have ownership in that. So kind of like Trisha said, both teacher and student letting their guards down and just showing up as their authentic selves in learning. And that can sometimes mean I have to put away my, like, this is a little bit loud in the classroom right now, like this is a little bit this or that. Like, no, that means everyone is having fun and being their true selves. And that's what it's all about.
Thank you. How about you, Drew?
Yeah, so for me, it's a few things. The first one is sort of along the lines of what Fee was saying, that when you see or someone tells you that you've made a real impact, that's just incredibly rewarding. So like when I've mentored teachers and I can see from observing that this certain practice we've been working on is getting better, or when they come and talk to me and say like, oh, I like really excited, I did group work today and I tried those things that we talked about and it worked really well. The kids were, they were interacting a lot more and they were working so much more cooperatively. It's in those moments where you realize like, oh, something that I did really had an impact, made these students work together better, made this teacher's day a little brighter. When I hear from people who are using my curriculum about how they've been looking for something like this for a long time and they're so grateful to have it now, or, oh, one of my students who's not really interested in math thought that was really cool when, they learned about how, it was actually Indian mathematicians who came up with zero or something like that. It's those moments, I think, that are probably the number one thing that sustains me. I'd say number two, it's also just relationships that you build in that teacher leadership work. I think especially with like the mentor-mentee relationship just gets so strong, and it's so rewarding to kind of be that professionally close to a teacher where you know so much about each other's practice, and inevitably you're also going to end up learning a lot about each other's personal lives as well. I think those relationships can be really sustaining. And then I think the third thing is just still the kind of what Trisha was saying, the hope and the promise of what could be, right? That the work isn't done and it will never be done. But I think it's exciting when I think to myself, like, okay, what's the next step? Or what's the next thing that I could work on? Or how could I take this even further? That's exciting because it means that there's like a whole world of possibility that hasn't been explored yet, in our little science lab, to go to that same little metaphor.
Yeah, Fee.
I just want to add, I don't know if this fits, but boundaries keep me going. I think as TL folk, we like to say yes to everything. And it's hard to say no. It takes a lot of effort to say no. So I think something that sustains me is knowing when enough is enough, and wanting to do the things that I have in front of me really well.
Thank you for sharing that. I met with one of my current cohorts of teacher leaders the other night, and I asked them to celebrate teacher leader success. And people were tired. It was the end of a really long day, and they were kind of thinking, "What have I done? What have I done?" And one person said, I'm setting really good boundaries." And that was her share that she did. So I just appreciate you saying that, because I've heard others echoing that as well, that we can best show up for others when we're willing to set those boundaries. Thank you. Deborah, do we have any Q&A or things that we want to move to right now? And or should I pivot to some additional questions I have, or have people asking each other questions?
Hi. Yeah, I think I see a question actually around, and some of you have talked a little bit about this already, but it would be great to hear about some particular challenges that folks have encountered and how you've managed some of those challenges.
It's a great question. Thank you, Deborah.
I can talk a little bit about that. Sylvia knows this well, but I'm really involved in our literacy PD. And so we've been grappling with, if you know what structured literacy is versus balanced literacy, and the whole reading wars that everyone's smiling. Yes, you know it well. So our school uses the units of study from Teachers College, which I have been trained in for years, and was a demo class in Seattle, and have seen some of the great results of that for a really long time. And I work with some people who really do not see the benefits of that. And they also haven't had the professional development that I've had. So I've just kept fighting for what I know has worked in my classroom and what can work for all kids. And it's been really challenging. But I have, like somebody said earlier, I think it was Fee, just like staying open to I actually wrote down what she said, being constantly open to new ideas, because I've had to do that myself, and it's helped me bring other people along, and it's been really slow, but it's happening, and teachers are starting to see the benefits with their own students. It hasn't gone as quickly as I liked or as I hoped, but it is coming along, and I've had to shift some of my own perspective too. And that has been really nice, because I think we're coming together in a place in the middle that's really benefiting all of our students and all of our teachers as well. So
I can speak to a challenge, unless Drew, you like are dying to go. One of the challenges for me personally has been negative feedback. So when we do run a PD and we do an anonymous operatives, some of the negative, maybe negative is not the right word, but it's not as agreeable as you'd hope it would be. People are uncomfortable, or people are pushing back, and you feel bad, but it's like 4 people out of your staff of how many, right? And so a challenge is where you're putting your focus and your efforts. Am I going to focus on the 25 people who said this was a really good thing that helped them learn and move forward? Or am I going to focus on the 4 who are having a hard time with it? And someone in one of our admin meetings recently said something to the effect of, like, we can't worry about where people are on their personal journeys. We have to just know, I just don't want to butcher their words, but it was, we can't worry about where people are in their personal journeys as long as they are moving forward, as long as we're all growing together. Because if I just like hyper fixated on those 4 and how they felt, then I don't think we could make as much progress as we are making.
So I'll talk about 2 challenges. I think probably the challenge that any teacher or teacher leader would probably always say is time. Just you're just never going to have enough time to do all the things that need to be done or that you want to do. And it's kind of sad to admit that, but kind of goes along with that idea of, we can't say yes to everything, and we can't take the lead on absolutely everything. no teacher can, right? We just we reach a certain point at which we've given what we can for the day or the week or whatever it is, and then we need time to recharge so that we can come back the next day, because otherwise we might completely burn out and leave, right? So I think the best way to manage that challenge is to prioritize, certainly, but also I think also one thing I've really learned is that sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day of like, I need to get this lesson plan, I need to do that. And those things are really important. But I've actually done a little shift to sometimes actually I'm going to just work on the long-term thing. I'm going to work on that thing that like we keep saying we want to do, but we don't have time for. Well, I'm just going to sit down and do it now instead of making tomorrow's lesson the best lesson ever, right? Because otherwise, will this thing ever get done? I don't know, right? And I'm excited to work on it too, whereas I'm maybe less excited to like plan my lesson for tomorrow. So let's just go ahead and do that thing that I've been wanting to do, and I've been that we've been needing to do. So prioritizing, but also recognizing that sometimes the priority is those long-term things more so than all of the little short-term needs that tend to fill up our days. I'd say the other big challenge is other big challenge can be kind of level of teacher commitment or buy-in when you're kind of maybe leading a team or working with a team, because not everyone's always going to be committed to the same level, or not everyone's not always going to want to focus on the same things. And so I think the way to do that is making sure that you are kind of establishing your goals up front so that you know where everyone is coming from. Because I think when you don't do that, you can kind of come into this assumption that we're all here for the same reason, and then you slowly start to realize we're actually not. So making sure you're establishing those goals and like what everyone actually wants to get out of the team experience or out of the mentor experience. And sometimes having to let go a little bit as a leader, right? The same way we have to let go as teachers, that I can't control everything. I can't control everyone. So on some level, I have to, let other people lead sometimes, or go in a direction that maybe wasn't the one I wanted to go in, but could still be beneficial for us.
I wrote down, never make assumptions. So I think it's such a powerful reminder as teachers and as teacher leaders that we come in with our mindset and assume that people are on the same page, and that may or may not be true. And as Fee was saying, we can't worry too much about where people are at on their journey, as long as they're coming along with us at whatever pace is going to work for them, and that we're tracking that and moving everyone along. Deborah, you want to pick another question?
Yeah, you all
We
are
have a few more minutes here. Yeah.
You all are offering so many, so much amazing advice and experience and beautiful stories. And I'm just so grateful to all of you for coming together today. Thank you. Maybe we can ask one more. I think we might have time for one more question. How would you, looks like, would you recommend others engage in teacher leadership, and any advice that you have to new teachers?
I can go because I kind of told a bit of my first year teaching journey, and I would just say the smallest act or the smallest commitment, if it's something that you genuinely feel passionate about, you never know where that journey might take you. And committing to one small thing. Most of my teacher leadership positions, whether formal or informal, began out of one tiny action that I took. And actually part of that was I entered UW's master's program in a different degree, and I took one class in the summer. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to listen to my gut. And I think I'm meant to be in the instructional leadership program. And here I am a few years later. So listening to your inner voice, I think, is a really good jumping off point, and only good things can come from that.
Great reminder.
Teacher leadership doesn't mean any one thing, and
Mhm.
everybody has a strength. And sometimes it's hard to recognize what your own strengths are and want to highlight yourself. So I think maybe some part of it, the onus is on the building leadership team to create opportunities for people to rise to the occasion. What I would have to say about new teachers, though, is like, you are already leaders. Don't assume that you're not, because you have the latest and greatest. Like, we want to learn from you. You are fresh out of college. You know all the things we don't know. So again, I know like the learning curve is really high because you're learning all your systems, you're building relationships with your kids and people in your building, you're figuring out your classroom and your classroom management. It's a lot. And recognize that you have a lot to offer and find spaces where you can offer all the things that you know, because you are brilliant. You made it.
Mhm.
One of the things that a mentor told me in my first year of teaching was just to be a problem solver in my classroom and keep working to put myself out of a job, which kind of sounds silly. But in first grade, that means things like when we would be complaining, I'm like, I can't keep tying shoes. Like, this is taking up so much time. And then she said, you need to put yourself out of a job. So put up a sign that says, I'm a shoe tying expert, and let kids sign up. And oh my gosh, I was like, oh, this is all it took. Even kids who didn't know how to do it, they were working because they wanted to put their name on the list. And I know that transfers to all grades, that you just constantly want to be putting yourself out of these jobs that aren't a priority for you and that kids can solve for each other. And another thing is, I also know that not all teachers are the same, just like students, but if you're a perfectionist or trying to just like a control freak, and I wanted to be so organized, and I just had a principal who almost every day had to say to me, progress over perfection, just over and over and over again. And that I can still hear her voice, but I have to say that to myself still now, 21 years into teaching, because sometimes it keeps me from trying something new in my research lab here, because I'm like, it's not perfect. But then you just give it a try, and you do get feedback, and you can just keep, I don't know, I maybe I'm like using that metaphor too much, but I just think that's kind of how I think about it. And that was really good advice.
Someone in the chat was asking about this being recorded, and yes, it will be, and we'll have that link available because there's been so much here. I even from my researcher hat or whatever, I'm like, I want to go back over everything that you all have said, because I feel like there's really rich themes here and ideas to keep gleaning from this. And what you just said, Trisha, about perfectionism ties back, I think, really nicely also to what Grace had said about efficiency and like finding that sweet spot. I think for all of us as teacher leaders, with doing well enough at everything that we're doing, and also leaving the space for saying, actually, I think it was Drew who was even saying, like, I don't need to work on that so much on that lesson tomorrow. Instead, I'm going to do the longer term thing that's also important. So that kind of juggling of priorities and self-care and managing our own perfectionism and all that feels to me like really a crucial part of the teacher leadership equation.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to everybody that's here, and especially to all of you who have been speaking with us today. Again, Sylvia, thank you so much for bringing all of these amazing teachers together. And thank you to each of you, Trisha, Fee, Drew, Grace, thank you for sharing such rich experiences and ideas with us and helping us learn from your leadership. So many ideas to consider, to continue thinking about, and appreciate all of the kind of actionable ideas you shared as well. So thank you so much.
I knew it would go this way, Deborah. Remember we talked about it. Like, what should we do? I'm like, let them talk, ask them questions and let them share, because there's so much there. So my thanks and sincere appreciation to all of you too. I didn't know how it would go, except I knew it would go exactly like this, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Love that.
So thank you, amazing teachers.
Thank you all. And let's see here. want to share a little bit more information as well. Want to make sure folks know about, we have a couple more sessions coming up next week. We have a session on Monday around elementary mathematics. We also have a session on Tuesday from our school psychology program. And we invite you all to join us there as well. We also have, this summer, we have some exciting events coming up as well. Some of the topics that we'll be offering are listed here. Many of them are already available for registration. Others will be coming soon, and you can find them on our website. And you might be interested in particular in a 3-day course in July that will be co-facilitated by Sylvia and a colleague, Dr. Chell Strumer-Rowe. So we will share a link to those in the chat. Here we are. You can also find a link to our other summer events there. And if these ideas sound interesting, but you're looking for something more, our office can also work with you to create a more customized professional learning experience for your team or your school or your district. You can reach us at connected@uw.edu. And with that, we will say thank you to everybody and look forward to connecting again soon.